All right, so today I took the time to fix a hydraulic steering leak for a 1985 Massey Ferguson backhoe. This particular one is a MF 50D model with a Perkins 4-cylinder diesel. I believe the model is an A4236. But so on this one, the steering ram was leaking on it. And this is the new hydraulic ram in place, but the old one is leaking very heavily out of the front seal here. I'm gonna have to refill the reservoir on it probably once a day or so. So overall, it was pretty easy to replace. The only thing that threw me off, or I couldn't make sense of initially, was the pin here for the front of that hydraulic ram. So all you see is this threaded stud sticking up. And when I saw that, I was expecting to see maybe the head of a bolt underneath, but there's absolutely nothing accessible underneath. And what I came to realize was this is actually just a press fit pin that's probably about 3.5 inches long. And what they intend for you to do is to use these threads and pull the pin straight up. So these are, as far as I get, these are 1/2 inch SAE threads, so 1/2 inch by 13. So I put a coarse thread nut on there and several 5/8 washers, and I was able to pull that pin straight up. And I'm going to clip to another video here to give you a little bit more detail on that pin. Okay, so this is the new steering ram, just kind of laying in there. I got the lines installed, got a few more other things to wrap up. I wanted to show on the pin. So here's the pin that secures it to this really heavy-duty bracket right here. And what wasn't immediately obvious to me was that so there's a cotter pin hole at the top and bottom, and depending on what machine you have, Massey Ferguson could have put the cotter, or actually the roll pin, in either one. And in my case, it was in the bottom one. But the bottom one was so clogged up with dirt and debris, I didn't even notice it. So I actually, with the nut and washers, I used a 1/2 inch coarse thread nut and a bunch of washers. I pulled the pin up and didn't realize I was shearing the roll pin in the process, but it sheared okay and I didn't damage the threads on the pin, so that's a good thing. So, but depending on the machine you have, the configuration you have, they're likely going to use a cotter pin or a roll pin in either the top or the bottom. And in my case, in the bottom was a roll pin. So, but I used a hammer and a punch, and I was able to punch out what was left of that roll pin that I sheared. Okay, so to walk you through the process of removing the steering ram, and what I would call a pitman arm, they have to come out as one assembly. So the first thing to do is to remove that pin using that 1/2 inch nut and a lot of 5/8 washers and draw that pin straight up. Once you do that, you can start the backhoe up, turn the steering wheel counterclockwise, and that will draw the hydraulic ram inward. At this point, you can undo the hydraulic hoses here, just 2 hoses. Pretty easy to do. A flare nut right there and one right there. They come off pretty easily. And you're going to lose a little bit of fluid, but not much. So I took those hoses and kind of crammed it up over here in the machine to get them out of the way. Once you do that, you undo, well, maybe even before you do that, there's a snap ring here. And this might not be obvious to you because it might be covered with grease and oil. But remove that snap ring. And then, undo this pinch bolt, remove that. Back here, at least in the case of this machine, this pin has a grease fitting here, and it's got a grease hose so you can remotely grease it. You can see on this, it actually runs to the outside here, but pretty easy to do. So you just take that was a 1/2 inch wrench, remove that grease hose, and then once you do that, you can take a pry bar and right under here, just press up on that and lift it straight up. And in my case, it was pretty easy to do. Nothing was seized because everything was coated so heavily with oil. But overall, I was really expecting a lot of these fasteners to put up a fight, but it was pretty easy. So once you have it out, then and only then, so once you have, again, the hydraulic ram and the pitman arm pulling out as one assembly, once you have them out, now you can access these pinch bolts here for that pin back there. So there's a bolt right there and a bolt here that you can't see, that's tucked away. Then you can undo those. The old pin comes out, and yeah, pretty easy. The only thing I'm gonna say is that, so this hydraulic ram I picked up off of Amazon, obviously an aftermarket part, and the clearance for between the pitman arm and the ram was super tight right here at the tip of my screwdriver. If I can get this camera to focus, maybe, but extremely tight. So what I ended up having to do was actually grind down the casting here of the pitman arm. So I just took an angle grinder and a sanding wheel, and it didn't take a tremendous amount of effort, but just had to grind away the factory casting, some of the flashing that was on this steering arm, or idler arm. And yeah, so once I did that, then this arm was able to move freely inside of this hydraulic ram. So just be aware of that. This arm should move very freely and rotate very freely on this pin back here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Worked out really well. I'll show you. So on this one, this is a Perkins A4 236. To the best of my knowledge, I'd imagine most of these machines have this engine. But so here is the hydraulic pump for the steering system, and you pretty much just undo that nut right there and top off the fluid as much as you can. You're gonna have to look at the spec for the fluid. In my case, I used I think AW32 hydraulic oil, but having done that, I believe the spec might actually be to use ATF transmission fluid. It's hard to say. This has been changed over the years, but you know, just try to look up the specs of the fluid. That's a breather for this the reservoir in there. That's pretty much it. So I worked the steering back and forth to work out any air in the system, and yeah, got it working. Doesn't leak a drop. Very happy with that, and this thing is ready to be put back into service.